Let's go.
And we're back, guys. Episode number 23, our Jordan episode. Hope you've, again, enjoyed your Thursday. If you're listening to it on a Friday, hope you have a really good Friday and a really good weekend. We actually started, discussing this literary podcast without recording it beforehand. And we wanted to today dive deep into journaling, introspection, mindfulness, and everything around that. So, Nathan, I know you went in quite hard. Well, I say hard. You went hard in the paint very, very quickly. So let's dive deep into it and let's kind of talk about it. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So what we were trying to talk about is there a difference between the nature of always asking why within yourself and the nature of being introspective. And I was saying that without the definition which Emily corrected me on is that there's a difference between I was just all feelings, no facts, and Emily was facts, no feelings.
What?
Yeah, we have the same.
It's a statement. Yeah, it's not that you don't have any feelings. But what I was saying is that there is a difference massively in people asking why within themselves and coming up with answers versus observing, understanding, questioning, and challenging that then lead to different responses and different actions that come from that. Like if you continue to ask why without the understanding of how ego plays a part, how your environment plays a part, you will end up with an answer that will be the product of those things without understanding them. Because if you're being introspective, you're also then questioning your ego, you're questioning these environmental points, you're questioning and understanding these points, so that when you do actually come to an answer and you do come to a conclusion, it's come based on understanding all of those variables. Whereas if you're coming to journaling for the first time and you're like, why do I do this? Why do I do that? Why do I do this? But you don't understand what your drivers are and your factors, then you're just going to come to an answer that suits whatever your headspace is at this moment in time. And normally for most people, if they don't break the ego or they don't understand their ego's role, it will probably be something that suits that ego to some degree or some other. And I definitely personally, as a bias perspective, have made decisions based on journaling being the gold standard, and realized that actually even in my own journaling and interpretation, I hadn't considered all of the variables that would consider introspection. And that was what I was going for.
I want to go back actually to let's go back to your early days of your journaling, because I think that's when we can, why did you start journaling is a question. Because a lot of people, have got into journaling a lot over the last, let's say, 5 years, in my opinion, especially when they start their fitness journey or just generally anything to do with self-development. People want to get into journaling. I think all of us here journal. Emily, I think you journal as well.
Not this year.
Okay. Oh shit, you retired from journaling.
I'm yet to open my book to start journaling, but yeah, I think we should probably also talk about what we consider journaling in and why we do it and when we do it and etc. Right? And also,
so I want to go back to Nate there. I want to go back to him and his early days of journaling, because I remember you told me a couple of I think when Miami, something like that, on holiday, you were like, oh, I did it a couple of years ago, it didn't really work for me. And then I remember you started doing it. You doing it quite early on before anyone else, from what I remember. But yeah, let's go to your early days and then how it transitioned into you kind of becomes like a daily thing for you. And I think it's obviously transitioned even more since then. But yeah, let's just discuss the journey from you.
So when I first did it was a way of downloading my thoughts, because I didn't really speak to many people about. I just bottled stuff up and didn't do anything with it. So when I was making decisions, when I was making moves and changing every single day and doing things daily, I never really understood why I do things. It was based on impulse, which I'm great at, or it's based on reactivity. And I didn't really understand why I was making and getting in a pickle all the time with various decisions that I was making. And then what I decided was that I just wanted to write it out and write it in the here and now. So for me, my journaling was at the beginning was storytelling what I was doing in the day, and that helped me understand. Okay, why do I do? I did this, and then I did that. I felt like this. I felt like that, because there's that. Now what I know it as is there's like various areas of you understanding yourself. It's like, okay, what physical sensations do you have? What emotions do you have? What feelings do you have? What actions do you have? What thoughts do you have? And I would write these down in storytelling mode. And I quite like writing a story, that's fine. And it was almost like I'd take myself out of it and I would write it as a third person. And by doing that, that then gave me that okay, I'm doing this because of this, or I'm doing that because of this, or this is what I'm doing. And then when you write it down on a piece of paper, you look at it and go, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why have you just made that decision? Or why are you even doing that? And that would allow you to question those variables. And that's how it started. It was just a bit of storytelling.
And then obviously since then, there was a period I remember like not early days, like I didn't even know you then, but you said like you tried it and it didn't work. What part of that didn't work for you, and was it just like you were writing some notes and you're like, I'm not really finding anything about myself here, and just like I sack it off? Because those people do that, right?
Yeah. So the bit that it didn't work for me was that when, and actually it was more 2020 actually, that I had a year and a half of it where it worked, and it was working for whatever that reason was. And I got to a point of where I didn't know what to write daily. I was pretty happy with the situations I was in. I knew what kind of decisions, because I was, in quote unquote, aware of what I was doing more so in real time. And it was when it started, everything started to be good, it started to not really affect me and have that. So I was like, it doesn't really, I was just making molehills out of mountains out of molehills. So like I'd journal about the smallest thing, and then it'd become the biggest thing, and then it'd become overwhelming. And for me, that didn't work for me, because I was having a good time. I just didn't want to. I didn't need to go any further. It's like I didn't need to open that Pandora's box. And something that my therapist says now is sometimes you don't need to know why about everything. You don't need to, like, there's no reason for you to do so if it's not causing any negative harm, if you don't want to. And I was exploring everything. We're talking like sexuality, like day to day life, like everything. I was like, well, why do I like this, or why do I like girls, or why do they become attractive to me, or like why do I attract to them? And like you start making random conclusions about some of the craziest things, just because everything was going good, and I thought I'd make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah, you went from like meal plan to MyFitnessPal.
Yeah, literally.
Within that whole journal, right? You were like, this is a bit too much. You explored new foods and you're like, Jesus.
So wait, do I like girls? Do I? I'm not sure. I was like, no, I need to turn this journal before I start turning.
And did you always do that in the morning, or was that like, because that would have been a crazy morning in my opinion. I don't know how you get into work after that. hour and a half and you're like questioning everything in your life at 8 a.m. It's like, how was supposed to do check-ins after that? But was it mornings or evenings? Evenings would have been even messed up, I think, because you can't go to sleep after that.
Yeah, it's like I don't go to sleep. So no, I did like half an hour in the morning, and then I would do a little bit extra in the evening if I needed to. The evening stuff is more like crisis aversion. Like if I've had a proper shit day, then I'll write about it. But nowadays, like, it's morning only, because it's quite excitatory for me now at the moment. Like if I go into something, even if I do it at the moment, I'll be like, fuck, I'll be up all night thinking about it. So I don't access that in the evenings.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it can be a bit too much for a lot of people, right? I think in the very beginning, when you start journaling, it becomes a very interesting aspect. And then, as you mentioned, as you progress. So question is, like, is there a period where we should stop then journaling for a bit and like kind of think, okay, look, I'm in a place where I'm, as you mentioned, quote unquote, happy. Do I need to question every little thing that I do on a day-to-day basis? Or then do I change my method of journaling? Like, Emily, what's your experience with journaling so far? I know you said you stopped. So let's explore, because you've done it. That means you've done it.
I just haven't done it for probably almost 4 months, but I haven't stopped journaling. I wouldn't say that. It's just intermittent. I mean, I think I've always written a diary. My mom just chucked like shitloads of old diaries on my bed, and I've been like looking through it. And I think when I started, it's probably when I was getting a little bit bullied in school, and you needed an output, right? And I think for me, similar to what Nate said, like, I write mostly when I'm mentally not in a good place, but not necessarily, I don't go into like, why am I not in a good place? Why this, why like what I do, like I like to call it dumping, just get it off your chest. I just think that whatever we feel, it needs to get out in one way or another. And I think having a journal is an awesome way of doing it, because when you, especially when you write by hand, you slow your thought process down so that you actually have the capacity to like sit with your thoughts and go like, okay, and then you can keep writing and actually be honest, right? It's like being honest. But I think the most profound moment for me when I realized how freaking powerful it was actually a couple of years ago when I'd done a fair share of journaling when I moved to Sydney. And for whatever reason, I broke up with my ex-boyfriend and I moved out. And then I went back and I read my journal. And from being the person pointing fingers of what wasn't my fault and what was his fault and why he was this and this and this and this, all of a sudden, just by looking at my own words, I said, I was going to say motherfucker there, but I just said it anyway. I literally said, wow, you're not taking any responsibility here for creating your own happiness. So for me, it's kind of like, I check myself. Am I taking responsibility for the things that is happening in my life? Am I taking responsibility for my emotions? Am I taking responsibility for my success, for my losses? You know, and that, for me, journaling is all about that. It's not necessarily to know exactly why and analyze and go, but why is this and this? I know, but am I taking responsibility for how I am today? And if I'm not, I'm going to be a victim, and I'm going to keep journaling for the rest of my life because I'm never going to actually realize that. So I get back into journaling sometimes more longer periods when I feel like I have something I need to, I guess, in a way, internalize and go, okay, it's okay to feel this way, but you have the power to change this. And so for me, that's how I use journaling. And I think that works for me. I still generally recommend people to journal, but I think you can also live. I'm a very introspective person. I don't need to write it down on a piece of paper. It's the same with meditation, right? I don't need to sit with crossed legs and close my eyes to feel like I'm meditating sometimes. So I think if we're gonna like box things in and like saying I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that, then it becomes also this thing. So I like to see that it's like a bit more free spirited, and I still do introspection on a daily basis. I just don't always write it down. So yeah.
It's like intuitive eating.
Yeah.
Where you're now able to check yourself more frequently because you know the patterns that you go through.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental of it, right? It's not meant for you to sit down 25 minutes every single fucking day. Like, you've got better shit to do. But the process is that you start doing that to get better awareness, to get better processes, and then you then master that cross-legged variation of the yoga, and then you go into walking, or you go into just sitting there with your legs and a coffee in your hands, and you read a book, and you can meditate and have meditative thoughts whilst you read a book. And that's kind of the point, right? You're not meant to just like, well, if you want to go deep and get amazing at meditating, and get amazing at mindfulness, or you're amazing at one of those things, then obviously the most strictest form will always be best, but we've all got shit to do, so it's never going to get done. It's like practical versus optimal, isn't it? Like optimal probably would be cross-legged with some whale music on in the background, but we all live in cities that you can hear beeping horns and stuff like that. That's not going to be we're not living in monasteries over here. I just read a book about mindfulness, and the guy talked about living in a monastery and stuff like that. Crazy, bro. Crazy. Imagine, right? This is quite a funny story. They teach them mindfulness eating, and basically what they do is they serve them ice cream and then make them eat their normal food of chicken and lentils or whatever it was, lentils and rice in somewhere in Peru, for like 45 minutes, make them like take the smallest bites and smallest, there's literally a time frame that they have to eat this food in to kind of get the most out of it. So like mindful eating properly for like 60 minutes, but are sitting there whilst the ice cream is melting to teach them about control and like not going to rush their food. Like, they're preempting people to like kind of eat the food faster, they can have the ice cream. And by the end of these people, all of the guys, all the people in the monastery are all sitting there with liquid ice cream. And then they had to eat that very slowly as well. I was like, yeah, Simon, that's not for me. I'd rather not have the mindfulness and have the ice cream, if I can be completely honest. That's like looking at a Magnum and just sitting there looking at a Magnum whilst it drips.
Just goes all over your hand,
also,
and you're just like, what?
Something that, and maybe this is just me, but sometimes I feel like we measure success based on what we say we do. It's like, oh, you don't journal? Oh, you don't meditate? It's like, no, I do. I just don't do it in the definition that you think it is, right? So I think, and if we start to comparing ourselves to others for what they do and how they fill their mornings and what their like power hour is, like, yeah, but you should do what works for you. And that's the point of all of life, is like, you have to find what works for you.
Yeah.
And know that there are so many tools to be had available to try to find what works. So, but I love journaling, and actually I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's today the day I'm going to write something. And it's like, and it's like, and I love like having a beautiful, like I have a beautiful leather book, and it's like smells good. And, you know, it's like thick paper. It's so beautiful. And I love writing in it. And yeah, I'm just not.
How did your style come up? So for example, you said everyone has obviously a different style, for example, right? Like Nathan's got a different one, then you've got a different one. You must have got a style from somewhere to then be like, okay, I'm going to kind of maybe mesh it in from here or mesh it in from here. Where did that style originate from?
I mean, I've tried so many different kinds of, I've tried like the whole affirmation thing, I've tried the whole gratitude thing, and I think none of those really work for me. For me, it really is, what is shit in my life, or what do I don't like right now, whether it's like external or internal, and that's the thing I want to focus on. Because if I don't know what my problems are, I'm not going to solve them. So for me, it's not really, I don't have like a set template of how I write. It kind of is like, what do I feel, get it out. And I like to look at it and go, okay, cool. So what's your take on this? Like what is, so say I'm going to go back to my previous example, you know, sorry, ex-boyfriend, for talking about this. No, I'm just kidding. But
he's a wanker anyway.
Getting roasted every episode.
A massive wanker, but you know, he's actually coming on the podcast, not gonna lie. We've got
interviewed about it. We're good friends now anyway, so you know, I think it's all water under the bridge, and there's no there are still bridges there, you know.
Elephants never forget.
Good memories, eh?
A woman never forget. No, but like, look, so like it was a very hard time in, I think, both of our lives, and there was a lot of change. And you know, I did a huge amount of change going to Sydney, and I left job, like, you know, there was a huge transition. And I think my expectation on what would have happened in this relationship didn't meet up with what actually happened, and I was pointing fingers on what should have happened. Whereas in reality, what I learned just by looking at I looked, and it was like a revelation. I saw it. I was like, victim. And I hate being a victim. And you can only be a victim if you make yourself one. So for me, it was this thing of like realizing how little responsibility I took for myself. And I only saw that, this was like, we'd say 3 months later. So I didn't actually see this in the beginning. But in that moment, when I read my own words, it was the most powerful thing. And it literally transformed my entire like outlook on so many things. And I apologized to him, because I felt maybe I suffocated him, maybe I did this or that, and I apologized for all of it. Not saying that he was in the right or me was in the wrong, really, but I took responsibility, and it was and it was empowering for myself. Like, I didn't really care if he, like, I don't even think he thought I should have apologized, but that wasn't what it was. It was like actually taking back the power to feeling like I wasn't a victim anymore. And that only happened because I saw how I was actually writing down my own words. So I don't have a template, but I like to look at it and go, cool, whose responsibility is this? And the answer is always the same. It's mine.
Because a lot of people ask us that question, right? It's like, you know, when people want to start journaling, how do I journal? Is the biggest question you always get asked. And I think for people who are listening to that right now, the way Emily just mentioned it was probably like, I won't say it's a template you should go for, but it's literally like, look into that. That's probably one of the best ways you can kind of look into what needs to be done.
And if you look at that as a variable as well, that's what Emily wants out of it. That's what she wants out of journaling, right? You use it as a tool. Like, you don't use the spanner to break a window. You don't use you use a screwdriver to screw a screw. Like, for her, that's the tool that she's utilizing to not become a victim, and that's what she subconsciously wants it to be. But when you start your journaling, you may be like, I just need it as a download, or I need to express, or I want to know what's going on inside my head to make it real. And there will be something that you're utilizing it for. Let's say, for example, if you're let's say one of the most common areas that people will utilize journal is to explore feelings and explore emotions more so than oh, I just overate on Friday. It's like, no, why did you do that? What made you do that? Or how did you come across this? What's stopping you from reaching your goals? That will be expressed, right? So you will then come to your journal and be like, I just need to express in that scenario to understand why I'm making those decisions. And that'll be the bar that you go for. Like eventually you may get to that point where Emily's at, where it's like, okay, well, she's looking at it for a specific thing. Like she's not trying to solve a problem of food on a Friday. Why did she eat that licorice? She's more so like, how can I not make myself the victim? And then I'm also looking at it from a case of how can I get stuff off my chest without having to speak to another person. And that's the key fundamental of what it is we get from it. Same implement, same pen, same paper per se, but different endpoints.
Yeah, makes sense.
I
think it's definitely interesting. Like even for me, journaling, I started it probably about a year and a half ago. But for me, it's also a bit of gratitude in the morning, just for like what's happening in my day to day, just appreciating life in general. I'm very appreciative of life in any way. So I normally put it down as like my kind of go-to. And then I explore anything that's happening to me lately. And I'll try to look at it as a trend more than anything else. Like you said, I'm not panicky if something happens and I'm like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? I'm looking over like a 2-3 week period. I'm like, okay, this is a trend that's popping up quite often. Do I need to solve it? Do I not need to solve it? What do I need to do over here? I think that for me is like the case of journaling. It's not necessarily like I'm not trying to solve too much on a day-to-day basis. I'm very much like grateful. Okay, what do I need to do? I even put down my tasks sometimes. I'm like, okay, I need to do this, this.
Yes.
Going forward from a like even business viewpoint. And then I've got this to do. These are the things I want to achieve. So I'll do that and then I'll look back on it. And I've done that over the like past year. It's been weird. Like if I look back on my journal, like this time last year, I think it was like lockdown number 1, and it was just like the unknown is here, some shit like that. And then you look back on a year later, I'll probably look back again in the year. I'm like, wow, like compare it to like a year in, year out. It's completely different where we are with the headspace, obviously business, just generally people around us. It's completely different. So it's definitely one thing that people should explore it, but I also think you can also get in your head a bit too much. I think Nate, you were mentioning this like before we started the pod. Do you want to get into that a bit more?
Yeah, I think firstly, I think there's another really useful journaling tool. It's more for people that have utilized it before. Let's say if you are utilizing it intermittently, it's the taking stock of changing priorities, changing values, and changing actions on a day-to-day basis. Like if you go through large-scale change, what served you 6 months ago or what was working for you 6 months ago may not be what you need now. So I think that's really important that you almost have an audit of yourself of what your highest priority is, what your priorities are, your values, and where you're heading. Because often, if you don't do that intermittently, infrequently, life is so fast, like so fast. Like a month ago, where we were, what we were doing 6 months ago, fucking, I didn't have a business. I was working for someone else, and I'm like fucking hating life. Like a year, 2 years before that, I was in Dubai. 2019, I was traveling around the world. But if you don't catch yourself and you don't kind of take stock and don't be like, okay, what am I going towards now? What is the priority list? What are the values? You miss it. You assume that it's the same as 6 months ago. You end up going in the opposite direction or a different direction, and then you have to like come back and revert back. But that whole thing, I don't believe you can calculate priorities and values and actions without having some level of like sit down. It doesn't have to be through the journal. It is a good method, and it's a one for like it's in your diary, so therefore you do it. But there needs to be a calculated effort for you monthly or quarterly or bi-weekly to assess where you're heading and why you're heading, and is it still the same place that you want to go to? Almost like a flight. It's like if you're 6 hours in the air, a flight only has one direction, but we have the ability to stop midair, hypothetically stop midair and change the destination that we're going to, because we now want to go to South Africa instead of going to Iceland because we've changed our thought process. So I think that's what it gives you. It gives you the ability to re-divert the plane, and therefore don't end up in the when you left, you don't end up in the island that you don't want to be in, because in the midair it's changed.
Yeah, and a lot of people do re-divert quite often, right? When you think about it,
or don't divert at all.
Oh yeah, there's two extremes, right? People go loads of different things quite quickly. You just mentioned a couple of things there. It's like, holy crap, yeah, I remember those times. Like, and you've done it and you don't think about it too much. That's the thing. You're just like, I'm here now and I'm in the present day. And then when you, and then like you mentioned, other people just don't divert at all. So they're kind of in that uncomfortable zone. Like they're just there, and that's it.
Yeah, if it's not painful, then you don't move. That's some people, and then the other one is that it's painful to stay in the same position, so they'll always move. Me too. Join the club.
The forever moving.
Yeah. But we were speaking about once you do nail some level of basic journaling or basic awareness, introspection, there has to be a point of where you understand when to open the door, or when to like keep the door shut, of what to choose and what you're going from. But also then, when is it just becoming more harmful than good, and when are you actually becoming better as opposed to just becoming deeper? Like, deeper doesn't mean better. You exploring your thoughts doesn't mean it's better, because actually your thoughts are endless. They're never ever going to be, and they're not even true, right? So if you really question your thought process, when you make a right decision, you don't make a decision just based on your thoughts, because you base it on your actions, what you've done in the past, your environment, all these variable things. But if you go off just your thoughts and you're very a thinker, you could have 50 different thoughts that are in different areas that are not compartmentalized. They're all in different areas, which means that you could get twisted on what you actually want. Like, there's so many variables that you could go down, so many avenues you can go down, the rabbit hill. It's like the YouTube of your thought process. You watch one video, then you watch the next one, then the next one starts uploading, then you go down, boom, boom, boom. Next minute, you're thinking that you need to leave your kids and your wife, and you need to leave your job because you thought that was the worst. It's the worst thing ever. But when you let your thoughts express, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're better. Deeper does not mean better, right, Emily?
I can't answer that. Fuck's sake. But I think just another one that I think is a really important one, that a lot of people suppress their emotions on a daily basis, and journaling is a powerful way to get them out in one way. So yeah, I mean, suppression is the silent killer, I would say, to joy and happiness and life. So if for any reason you don't have anyone, you don't drain, you don't do anything to have an outlet somewhere, it is a powerful tool, and it's yours to keep, right? You can burn it if you want to. There's no right or wrong. So yeah, for me, I think when I really need it, that is where it comes in. When I have too many, I mean, I'm a very emotional person, so sometimes I need to get it out, and I mean, sometimes on paper is the best way, I think. So
yeah, I mean, paper, talking to people is always gonna be another option as well. I think for me, like, being introspective is great, but I always need to action it. Like, and the thing is, not everything needs an action either, by the way, but I'm talking about things that will be life altering or life changing. I need to go ahead, like, action those things, because like, I remember one of my stepdad's mates, he used to always be big on like introspection. It was weird, but when I say weird, it wasn't weird. He was introspective about like life, and like he was like, you need to. He was the one who introduced me to like The Secret, the law of attraction, and everything.
Wow.
Because if you do this, you can dream about the foreign. And I was like, okay, cool, but what are you like? What are you doing with this? Like The Secret, the law of attraction. Now I couldn't see anything tangible from him, so I was like, this doesn't work. He may have been other things in his life that he's found, but he was very, very like, you can do anything in your life you want in your life. It was great, but I was like, then so could you. I'm like, why are you not doing it? He was just stuck at home. And he was, even then, that's when he was like, he was a great example of just like very introspective, very self-aware about himself, but he just couldn't, when it comes down to action, he was just like, I'm allergic to this. Right. And I have issue with people who are allergic to like actions, because it's just like, actions is where, essentially the diamonds are made. And I want to see those diamonds rather than you talking about the diamonds and the size of the diamond. I want to see it tangibly there sometimes.
Yeah, but it's the same, you read any book and you take on so much knowledge. I mean, how many books do what people read?
That's what we said last time, right? With the book episode as well.
Really, if you don't action any of it, you don't get anything from the book other than the thought. But the thought is nothing unless there is an action behind it. So,
but I also think people start journaling nowadays because they've had 5 of their mates do it. So it's like a FOMO thing, right? Yeah. Oh, let me do journaling because then we can all introspect together. But reality is like, one person doesn't need to even journal, because it's like, what are you really going to find out about yourself? You're probably not even going to do anything about it, and just becomes that kind of cycle of like, I need to fit in more than anything else.
Yeah,
So
it's just about mental masturbation, really, isn't it? For some,
exactly.
like, especially it's like a group of people. The fitting in, the FOMO will always be there, whatever it is, even if it's journaling, doing a photo shoot, or like being a season ticket holder at a football club. Like, you'll have enough people around you that will do stuff like that. But when it comes to that thought process, like, you can get high on your own supply of thoughts, and majority of it comes from uncertainty and anxiety, because when you think about things in the future or the past, you either get guilt or you get uncertainty, and then people like thrive off that feeling of uncertainty, and that come from the mental masturbation of thinking about what if and what could be, and how that drives forwards. And that's great, and you can find a deeper reasoning, and you can always think deeply about it and have so many perspectives in your mind. But if there is a job to do on some variability of this, is there, like, you have to put pen to paper or finger to keys, then you have to transfer that. And that's where people then lead or misinterpret, because they think that more thought, more education, more perspectives, and more understanding actually lead to more action. But there's so much more that goes into you being able to deliver on that specific thing, that the more than just it's more input equals more output. That doesn't actually exist. It's not it's a false negative. It's like, just because you have more education, more thought process, doesn't mean you can act better. You can still be a cunt.
Yeah.
at all points. You can always be an idiot. And I think that the blend of the two comes with the form of, in my own opinion, is that you, as Kmart said just before we hit record, is that you take a bit and then go. You take a bit and go, and you start elevating step by step by step by step, as opposed to taking all the buffering in your mind to then be like, at some point, I'm just going to explode and it's going to be amazing, and then you never do.
It's like the shopping bag theory, right? You're not going to carry every single one. You know, you can have maybe 3-4 in your hand, and then that's it, go. Then put it in the car and then come back.
Yeah, and
you just got to.
Yeah, and if you load them too heavily in one, then you'll fall through the bottom.
And then there you go, start again.
Yeah.
That's it.
It went back to the life back in the day there.
Or you go back to Asda again. I want a refund for this. What about you know, Emily, you touched on like meditation, right? A bit earlier in the episode. Like, what's your experience been like? You know, we've now got the rise of apps and social, you know, through social media. We've got Headspace, we've got Calm, I believe, as well. Is another one. And yeah, have you experienced any of those in the past? And yeah, what's been your experience with like as well?
So I think I'm like an app junkie. I download shit and I put it on once and then I exit.
And never use it.
Yeah, but no, the thing is, I don't know, this is something that it's always been this way with me. When I do something, I want to learn from the best. So I go to the source, let's say. So I actually went to a Buddhist meditation temple and I sat in silence for 10 days and I did a Vipassana retreat. So like I went straight into like the deep shit, where it was like existential. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. So I learned how to meditate. I saw the benefit. I mean, this was like we sat for 9 or 10 hours every day. It was intense. I don't meditate in that way. I like the thought of it. It's just I haven't made it a priority, and that is me owning that.
Wait, when did you do this, by the way? Like, in what time of your life did you do this? This is a very big question.
I did this a year and a half ago in Sydney, Blue Mountains.
Oh, wow. So for 10 days straight meditation.
Yeah, so we lived like nuns and monks, and there was no phones, no books, no writing, no reading, no talking, no looking in the eyes. We ate 2 vegetarian meals a day, and we weren't allowed to exercise or anything. That's all we did was meditate, eat, sleep. We had like a little area where we could like walk around in a circle for like an hour a day, and that was it. And I mean, I would recommend anyone to go and do something like that, because you will never think about anything the same afterwards, not even your own thoughts. You learn, I mean, that's where you have to like meet yourself, truly. Like it was literally the most hardest, heartbreaking, upbuilding thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was that profound. But again, like they recommend that you sit for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening to keep it up. I haven't done that. I know how to meditate. I can tell you I know now how to meditate, but it doesn't fit with my lifestyle right now. But I completely hear that it's my excuse for not doing it.
I also think that type of meditation is like, it's like doing keto, right? And hear me out. And the reason I say this is because it's like you do keto. Can you do that in 5 years' time? Like that style of meditation. Some people could potentially, but realistically, it's like it's very, very difficult. You said something about like you can read a book and meditate. I'm exactly the same, where I can be in a car and zone out, listen to music, certain music, and I'm zoned and I feel really good about it.
I mean,
It's a
if we're
weird
going to
thing.
tie this to fitness, I think that's when I meditate the most. As soon as I grab the bar, there's nothing else in the room. It's just me, the bar, and what I'm doing. So for me, I actually genuinely feel like it's meditation for me. I usually say that as well, which makes it a very spiritual experience when you exercise and you push yourself to that point. You know that when you're doing it, a set and everything else disappear. You know how you feel afterwards. And for me, that is meditation, a complete presence in what you're doing, regardless if it is in motion or out of motion.
Fitness is very spiritual, in my opinion. I
Yeah,
agree with that.
no, it's the most spiritual thing that you can do, and like personal development on a high. So
And it's physically changing, right? Like you're seeing that change. It's not
Yeah.
like, sometimes we talk about introspection there, right? Like you may not do anything, whereas fitness, you have to action it in order to feel it. Like you have to, like, no one ever does like a one run in the year. Let's say they do 10K in a year, and then at the end of the year they reflect back and like, oh my god, that was life changing. It doesn't happen that way. You
No.
have to constantly be at it for you to see that change, which
Yeah.
is, like I said, makes it very spiritual. But let's go back quickly to that monk lifestyle, because it's quite fascinating to me. So in the middle of the, like, let's say within the 5 days you're there, how did you feel? And then that post, you're thinking, okay, now I go back to the real world. How do I deal with, like, did you have this weird feeling of like, okay, how the hell do I do this? What I do here? Like, did you have this kind of foggy feeling?
Okay, so going into it, the first 3 days, it was a mental battle I've never experienced. I was doing like they do in the sales, and I focus on the next hour. I'm just gonna do the next hour, then I'm gonna go. Because you could leave at any point.
Oh, okay.
But I was like, it was so painful in like physically it was painful. You sit in the same position, like it's, it is physically painful, but it was the mental, emotional pain that was just crazy. And that went on for 3 days for me. But I knew at the third day that I knew I was going to stay. It's like I felt like I surrendered to whatever was going to come. And it was yeah, it was just amazing. And then there was like moments in the meditations where I actually had like pretty much like out of body experiences. Like you can take drugs, you don't have to take drugs to tell you that. Like there was some intense sessions, and you feel that it's healing. Like it was a very healing time. I remember when they gave you your phone back and it felt so heavy, and I was looking at it and I was like, you had thousands of messages, and obviously I didn't work for those. It was actually 12 days. So you came on the 1st and you left on the 12th. And I just like, it took me so long and I didn't want to hold it. It was like I felt the radiation coming, like you were so hypersensitive to everything. And going back to the world, yeah, it was funny. It was funny. It was, you became very aware, and like a lot of, like I was actually quite silent for a while because yeah, it was weird. It was weird to talk. It was beautiful to hear. Like it was so many things. Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely the most amazing thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was the hardest and the most rewarding thing. So if you have 10 days to spare and you go to a Vipassana retreat, I mean, there's some people doing 60 days in silence, living like that. And it's, yeah. And then afterwards, the beautiful thing was when you could actually speak again, because I was living with 50 women and no one spoke. We didn't, like, I felt like I already knew them. Like, because you make story, your mind is amazing creating things. And when you're so bored, it's like, whoa, you just have characters on everyone. And then all of a sudden people speak and it's like, wow. and then you just laugh, and it was incredible. So I mean, we could do a whole podcast about meditation and vipassana.
It's fascinating because I'm about to read Jay Shetty's book, because I've ordered it and I've got it right now, so I'm gonna see what it's all about. Nate, would you ever get into the whole like 10-day without speaking? I don't know if I could never pitch you doing it, but who knows?
No, I think it got me detracted at having 2 vegetarian meals a day. Like, no. Oh, you know what I'll do? I can do it in my house, but we can just with all the dominoes. We'll do dominoes and then meditate a treat. I think
snack in the evening, some fruits and tea. You know.
I think I often think about doing the ayahuasca trip, and kind of very, very not similar, but in some sense it is. And I would like to do
any other way. No.
Yeah,
Emily just says she's nothing like it.
Yeah, well, I'll that's my justification. I'll do the ayahuasca first, and then if I need any more healing, then I'll do a 10-day meditation treat. But no, I don't know because I know I'd benefit from it, but also then I'm coming back to this world anyway. I'm coming back to this place where I'm at right now to find the practical.
You don't. I think honestly, it was a significant defining moment in my life, in how I changed. So I don't.
Should we go deeper into this next week?
Yeah, we probably should go deeper to this. I'll prepare but like I don't think you do. I think you have moments in your life where you change. You can change as a human, and how your outlook on things change. And for me, that was one of those moments. So yeah.
It's fascinating to me. That's very, very fascinating. But yeah, we'll pick it up next week.
Yeah.
We'll be back, episode 24. Enjoy episode 23. It was a very fascinating one. In my opinion, we've dived deep into journaling, introspection, Emily's monk life, and we're going to be continuing part 2 next week. So tune in and peace out.